Every day, I would kowtow 3 times to an old ox and share half of my only food with it. The villagers all said I was crazy, treating a dying old ox like an ancestor. Until the night the heavy snow blocked the mountains, I was shivering in a dilapidated temple, freezing. He used his broken foot to pry open the temple door and dragged me into the swirling snow. The direction he dragged me was 30 miles away to the Immortal Cultivation Market. The snow was like knives cutting my face. But he ignored it, using his broad, bald forehead to firmly press against my lower back, pushing me step by step into that bustling world of cultivation. The Qingyun Sect market was warm as spring, its array shielding it from the outside cold. Cultivators came and went on the streets. Summer rain splashed, spirit beasts howled, and precious lights flashed. And I, leading a dying old ox, stood at the market entrance, like someone who had mistakenly entered a fairyland. How could a beggar from the mortal realm bring such a mundane animal in here? It's bad luck. This ox is going to die? Get out of here. My face flushed red. I wanted to disappear into the ground. I tugged hard on the reins. Old Huang, let's go home. I'll carry you back. But the old ox suddenly broke free from my grasp and walked straight to a roadside herbal medicine stall. He opened his mouth and snapped at a straw stick stuck in the ground, the kind used for prostitution in the mortal world. Under everyone's watchful eyes, he tossed his head and precisely planted the straw stick into the gap of the ox's broken leg. Then he walked to the center of the street, bent his hind legs, knelt on his front legs, and assumed a perfect sitting posture, raising his head high with an empty gaze, as if he were the best in the world. The entire place was deathly silent for 3 seconds before erupting into thunderous laughter. Ha ha. I didn't see that wrong, did I? This mortal ox, selling myself, is hilarious. This cow's become a spirit. It even knows how to bid and sell. What's with that look in its eyes? I feel like it's looking down on me. A cow with human-like intelligence. This young master just happens to need a treat. The crowd quickly parted, and a young man in brocade robes walked in, fanning himself with a folding fan, followed by 4 burly men. That was Zhao Tianba, the second young master of the Zhao family. Zhao Tianba walked up to Old Huang and pointed critically at the cow's head with his fan. Although it's a bit ugly, its brute strength is rare. The meat should be very firm. This young master has been practicing martial arts lately and is depleted of chi and blood, so I need to replenish it. The spirit stone rolled onto the snow and stopped beside my tattered straw sandals. For a poor boy like me, this was undoubtedly a huge sum of money, enough to buy half a village's fields. But I wouldn't sell. I slowly raised my head, my eyes showing no fear, had no place for greed. I bent down and picked up the spirit stone. Everyone thought I was going to put it away, but the next second, smack, I forcefully flung it, smashing it hard at Zhao Tianba's feet. Emperor is my family. Zhao Tianba's face instantly darkened. A burly man grinned and stepped forward. His large, fan-like hand reached for my neck, his palm glowing with an earthy yellow light. Don't touch him, I said, pulling out a rusty woodcutter's knife from my back. With a whoosh, the knife slashed at the man's wrist. Overestimating himself, the man caught the blade with his bare hands. The sound of metal clashing rang out. The knife couldn't cut an inch. Instead, the impact caused my hand to split open, blood flowing freely. I rolled away, and the man kicked me in the stomach. I flew backward, crashing heavily into the old ox's belly, spitting out a mouthful of blood. The snow beneath him turned red, and suddenly a deafening roar erupted. The surrounding cultivators' eardrums throbbed with pain. Those with lower cultivation levels immediately went weak and knelt on the ground. The young man's hands remained tightly gripping the reins, even in his unconscious state. He slowly raised his head. His once cloudy bull eyes had now transformed into eerie dark gold, pupils vertical, like golden cracks, radiating endless violence and killing intent. Zhao Tianba, upon contact with those golden bull eyes, suddenly felt a chill run from his tailbone straight to the top of his head. Zhao Tianba instinctively took a step back, his voice trembling slightly. The burly man who had attacked was closest. He was horrified to find himself locked in place by a terrifying aura, his entire body stiff, unable to move even a finger. The old ox did not roar. He didn't run wildly. He simply flicked off the straw marker on his head and took a step. The snow on the ground instantly evaporated, revealing black permafrost. Spiderweb-like cracks spread rapidly across the permafrost towards the burly man. Since you don't want to buy, a hoarse, aged voice, yet filled with supreme authority, suddenly resounded in everyone's minds. Not just heard, but its very souls were shaken. Then leave your lives behind. The entire crowd gasped in horror. The demon beast spoke. It's a demon general, not a great demon. This bull is a great demon in disguise. The crowd screamed and scattered, the scene instantly spiraling out of control. Zhao Tianba was so frightened, he dropped his folding fan. His face turned deathly pale. This old ox is incoherent. Kill him. Kill him. The remaining 3 bodyguards steeled themselves. Drawing his weapon, he unleashed a fireball, a windblade, and a hammer at the old ox. His breath transformed into a white sword of energy in midair, instantly piercing the oncoming fireball. Its momentum undiminished. It pierced the burly man's knee. A crisp, piercing crack of bone echoed as the man screamed and fell to his knees right in front of me. His face was deathly pale. Under the invisible pressure, his forehead slammed heavily against the snow with a dull thud. 1, 2, 3 times, blood seeped from his forehead, staining the pristine snow red. Zhao Tianba's legs trembled at the sight. His 3 bodyguards behind him also showed fear. Their weapons trembling slightly. The old ox turned his head. His golden, vertical pupils slowly swept over Zhao Tianba and his 3 bodyguards. Who's next? I. Everyone in the village thought I was crazy for kowtowing 3 times to an old ox, until the night the snow blocked the mountains. My cold poison flared up, and I collapsed in a dilapidated temple. The old ox actually dragged me away to cultivate immortality and visit the world. Amidst the laughter of the crowd, he sat in the middle of the street, offering himself up as a sacrifice. But the next second, the old ox's ancient, poignant kowtowing exploded in everyone's minds like a resounding bell, shaking their very souls. The burly man with shattered knees was in excruciating pain, but he was horrified to find himself unable to control his body. Before that seemingly ordinary old ox, he slammed his head heavily onto the snow, rolling twice in the wind. His face was pale, and his legs trembled, but this wasn't entirely due to fear. It was more a kind of madness born of humiliation. He was the second young master of the Zhao family. His aunt was the Taoist partner of an inner sect elder of the Qingyun sect. On this small plot of land, he was always the one who made people kowtow. When had it become the turn of a beast to make his people kowtow? Sorcery! Sorcery! Zhao Tianba screamed hysterically, his finger trembling as he pointed at the old ox. What are you all standing there for? Attack! Kill him! He tore the monster to pieces. The remaining 3 bodyguards exchanged glances. Besides, they didn't believe that an old ox that looked like it could die at any moment was a threat. Leading the group was a scarred-faced bodyguard who roared, his spiritual energy surging. He was at the 8th level of Qi, refining the strongest among them. He formed hand seals and chanted incantations. A crimson tongue of fire condensed out of thin air, instantly making the surrounding air unbearably hot. The snow melted into water at a visible speed. The raging flames roared, carrying scorching heat, hurtling straight at the old ox's face. At the same time, the other 2 moved as well. One unleashed a Vajra flying claw, aiming only for the old ox's throat. The other, wielding a giant hammer, leaped high, attempting to break the old ox's spine. A 3-pronged attack, their killing intent palpable. If this were the heavenly demon saint in his prime, he wouldn't even bother to lift an eyelid. At such an attack, he could extinguish it with a single breath. But now he was old yellow. An old, sick ox with withered blood and shrunken meridians. Even his demon core shattered. That previous burst of divine pressure and the breath sword had exhausted the essence he had accumulated over half a month. Now, facing the full force of 3 late-stage Qi refining cultivators, the old ox's cloudy eyes. A flicker of helplessness and determination flashed in his eyes. He couldn't dodge that broken body. His reaction was too slow, just at this critical moment. A thin figure suddenly sprang up from the snow. It was Suzuki. That kick had broken 2 of his ribs and injured his internal organs. Blood was still hanging from his mouth. But seeing Old Huang about to be surrounded, he didn't know where the strength came from. Like a wolf cub driven to the brink of despair, he rushed in front of Old Huang like a madman. The boy roared and spread his arms, using his thin, pitiful chest to block the path of the flames and the flying claws. Boom! The flame struck Suzuki's chest solidly. Although it was only a low-level spell, it was still a devastating blow. To Immortal, the cotton coat that Suzuki was wearing, pieced together from a tattered burlap sack, instantly reduced to ashes, his chest skin charred black, emitting a pungent smell of burnt flesh. The grappling hook was vicious, though slightly deflected by the shockwave of the flames. It still tore a large chunk of flesh from Suzuki's thigh, deep, hard, and blood gushing out like a fountain. The old ox froze, feeling a warm, sweet liquid flowing down his neck. That fool, he thought. Back then, he was just a young ox, newly awakened to intelligence, being chased by a tiger demon. It was this same, frail human boy who stood before him with a wooden stick, shielding him. Little ox, don't be afraid. I'll protect you. That person later became a powerful immortal, and he became the heaven-suppressing demon saint. Later, that person died, dying to protect all living beings. He hated that person. Hated that. He thought he would never again believe in such foolish emotions as sacrificing himself for insignificant ants. But now, looking at the ox lying at his feet, an indescribable rage erupted from the deepest part of his heart, like a volcanic eruption. This anger shattered reason, broke through the shackles of the body, and transcended the boundary between life and death. If the previous roars were merely a display of power, then this was the prelude to true destruction. The world changed color. The previously swirling snowflakes froze in midair. Then, a dense, unyielding demonic aura burst forth from the withered old ox. It was no ordinary demonic aura. It carried the aura of ancient times and was imbued with the essence of countless immortals and demons. The blood of the holy forest tree, sprinkled on the old ox, did not dry. Instead, it seemed to be absorbed by a sponge, rapidly seeping into the old ox's body. It was the shadow of the symbiotic contract, the boy's innocent blood awakening the sleeping demon god. The old ox's tough hide began to fall away, revealing muscles flowing with dark, golden, magma-like patterns. Its broken horn glowed brightly red, and a section of illusory golden horn, entirely composed of energy, was slowly growing back. Zhao Tianba's smile froze on his face. The bodyguard holding the giant hammer, ready to smash it down, stopped in midair. The old ox slowly raised its head. Its eyes were no longer cloudy, no longer fierce, only filled with a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. It looked at the scarred-faced cultivator who was spitting out tongues of fire, and the corner of its mouth. Every day, I had to kowtow 3 times to an old ox, and the villagers all thought I was crazy. Until that day, during a visit to a cultivator, the ox suddenly manifested a 100-foot-tall Dharma form, crushing 3 chi-refining cultivators with a single hoof. Everyone was terrified. Just when I thought I was finally saved, a Foundation establishment elder came in, holding a jade beast ring, and said he would subdue this beast. Above the visitor, the wind and clouds reversed. The originally gloomy snow clouds seemed to be violently stirred by an invisible hand, forming a huge vortex directly facing the old ox below. All the cultivators, regardless of their cultivation level, felt a tremor from the depths of their souls. An absolute suppression on a life level, like a rabbit encountering a fly, or an ant encountering a divine dragon. What level of demon beast was this? A mere mortal. The old Foundation establishment cultivator, who had been a street vendor in the city for many years, stared in horror at the vortex. The jade slip in his hand fell to the ground and shattered. This aura was impossible. How could such an existence appear in a remote market like theirs? Zhao Tianba had already collapsed to the ground, his crotch soaked. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like lead and wouldn't obey him. He was still not very big, and even looked as thin as ever, but behind him, a huge phantom, hundreds of feet tall, was slowly emerging. It was a divine bull with a dark blue-black body, its feet resting on thunderclouds, its back bearing the heavens. Its two horns were like swords piercing the sky, and its eyes were as bright as the sun and moon. Although this Dharma form was extremely faint, even somewhat transparent, clearly a manifestation of its last gasp, it was still a dimensional reduction attack against these few chi refining stage ants in front of it. The old bull's lips moved slightly, uttering this one word. He raised his right foreleg. The movement very slowly, like a slow-motion replay in a movie. Every detail was clearly visible. The mud on the hoof falling down, the mottled cracks on the hoof, and the dark golden light frantically gathering beneath their hooves. They desperately channeled their spiritual power, trying to escape, trying to defend themselves. The scarred-faced cultivator frantically slapped Vajra talismans onto his body. There were no dazzling spells, no fancy techniques, only pure, extreme power. The earth trembled violently, centered on the old ox's landing point. A visible shockwave exploded outwards in a ring. The hard bluestone pavement shattered instantly. Like a fragile biscuit, countless fragments were blasted into the air, and then pulverized by the terrifying sound waves. The giant hammer cultivator, suspended in midair, was directly struck by the shockwave, bleeding from all 7 orifices, and fell like a bird with broken wings. The Vajra hammer in his hand was shattered into pieces. The cultivator using the grappling hook had both legs broken at the knees, and his entire body was crushed. The one who suffered the most was the scarred-faced man, who was closest to the impact and bore over 70% of the force of the blow. His dozen or so layers of Vajra talismans shattered instantly, like paper. He was sent flying by the strange force, arcing tragically through the air before crashing heavily into the wall of a shop 50 meters away, creating a large, human-shaped hole. His fate was unknown. The old ox withdrew his hoof, and the 100-foot-tall Dharma image behind him slowly dissipated, turning into starlight and returning to his body. He breathed heavily, white steam billowing from his nostrils, his limbs trembling slightly. This attack had almost completely depleted the little bloodline power he had just awakened. But he didn't fall. He turned away, ignoring the terrified onlookers. And the man who was already terrified, the unconscious Zhao Tianba, looked down at me, lying in the blood pit. My chest was charred black. My breath was so weak I could barely feel it. My once clear and stubborn eyes were now tightly closed. Blood beads clinging to my eyelashes. The old ox's heart felt like it had been ripped apart. He stretched out his rough tongue and carefully licked my cheek, avoiding the burns. Wake up, brat. Weren't you so capable just now? Weren't you going to protect me? If you die, who will take care of me in my old age? Who will find that damned cow for me? A tear slid down the old ox's cheek and landed on my lips. It wasn't an ordinary tear. It was a holy tear containing a trace of the demon saint's essence. As the tear entered my body, my originally pale face regained a slight rosy hue, and my weak heartbeat strengthened. Although he had gained some strength, it couldn't save his life, but at least it temporarily kept him alive. Just then, a whooshing sound came from afar. The sound was sharp and piercing, carrying an undisguised powerful aura, far surpassing that of the previous bodyguards. What kind of monster dares to commit violence in my Qingyun sect's market? The light dissipated, revealing a middle-aged man wearing the robes of a Qingyun sect elder. This man had a goatee. His eyes were gloomy, and he was surrounded by the powerful spiritual pressure of a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Wu Changfeng, the outer sect law enforcement elder of the Qingyun sect, had been drinking tea at the nearby Wanbao pavilion. Sensing the terrifying demonic energy erupting here, he thought some rare treasure had appeared and immediately rushed over. Wu Changfeng's gaze swept over the messy battlefield. over the heavily injured bodyguards, and finally locked onto the old yellow ox. He couldn't discern the ox's exact appearance. However, he could sense the residual, extremely noble bloodline aura, something no ordinary demon beast could possess. Having struck gold, Wu Changfeng suppressed his elation, adopting a righteous expression. He pointed at the old ox and shouted, "What a ferocious beast, daring to injure people in the street and disrupt the rules of my market. Today, this sect will act on behalf of heaven and subdue this wicked beast." As he spoke, a golden jade beast ring appeared in his hand. Without asking any questions, he directly looped it around the old ox's neck. The old ox coldly stared at this hypocritical elder. He was extremely weak, beyond his limits. That kick had pushed him to his limit. Even standing was difficult, and he had no strength left to stand against a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Yet, his eyes remained arrogant. "You think you're worthy of me?" Just as the Beast-Taming ring was about to fall, a bloodied hand grabbed Wu Changfeng's ankle. "No, it can't be me." Although his consciousness was hazy, he instinctively reached out to stop someone trying to grab him. "Get out of here." Wu Changfeng glanced at the beggar at his feet with disgust and kicked me away. "A mere mortal ant dares to obstruct this elder's business." Although this kick, even without using spiritual power, he still kicked me so hard I rolled several times on the snow. The last breath I had managed to catch almost disappeared again. The old ox's pupils instantly contracted, and the anger that had been extinguished reignited. "Since you cultivators are all unreasonable, then I won't pretend anymore. At worst, I'll take your entire Qingyun sect down with me even if it means my soul is destroyed." The old ox roared, and the fragment of the shattered demon core within his body began to rotate in reverse. A destructive aura was brewing wildly within him. This was the last dignity and means of a demon saint. Wu Changfeng seemed to sense this dangerous aura as well. His expression changed, and the jade bracelet in his hand stopped abruptly in midair. A dying beast. If he fought desperately, he could really bring him down. The situation instantly became deadlocked. The old ox fiercely protected me, his eyes burning with a flame of mutual destruction. Wu Changfeng held the jade beast bracelet, caught in a dilemma. Everyone thought I had gone mad. Even more absurdly, I was assigned to the lowest level of the sect's servants' quarters. Working with that seriously injured boy, my daily task was to feed the pigs, but no one knew that. Just as I was about to detonate the demon core, those eyes, once burning with golden flames, regained their turbidity and calm. "Cat, let's talk," I said, though I couldn't speak directly. I scratched the snow with my hooves, pointed to the unconscious Suzuki, then to the jade beast ring, and finally to myself. Meaning, save him, and I'll go with you. Wu Changfeng was stunned for a moment, then overjoyed. This beast was indeed intelligent and highly perceptive. He had been racking his brains trying to subdue this bull before the destructive aura erupted, and now it was willing to compromise for a mere mortal ant. "You mean, as long as I save this kid, you're willing to submit to me?" Suzuki's injuries were too severe. Without immediate treatment, he would surely die. "I'll reveal myself," I said. "Although I can kill this elder, Lin Mu won't survive either. For this kid's life, I can break my pride again. This temporary compromise is for future reckoning. Old man, once I recover my strength, the first thing I'll do is turn you into a corpse puppet," I thought fiercely. On the surface, he obediently lowered his head, letting the golden jade beast ring, a symbol of enslavement, be placed around my neck. "Ha ha." Wu Changfeng laughed 3 times. Feeling incredibly lucky today. Not only had he gotten a spirit beast of extraordinary bloodline for free, but he had also saved himself a fight. As for that mortal boy, Wu Changfeng glanced at Lin, who lay on the ground like a dead dog. A hint of disdain flashed in Mu's eyes. This kid's injuries were too severe. His internal organs had shifted, and he was also suffering from the cold poison attacking his heart. Wu Changfeng frowned, took out a low-grade rejuvenation pill from his storage bag, and casually stuffed it into Suzuki's mouth. Whether he lived or died depended on his fate. This pill could only keep him alive. It was impossible to cure the cold poison and burns. But I didn't resist anymore. Wu Changfeng waved his sleeve, and a gentle spiritual force lifted Suzuki up. With his other hand holding the jade bracelet, he carried the man and the ox, riding on a cloud, and flying towards the mountain gate of Qingyun Sect. Qingyun Sect's outer gate's servants' quarters were a dilapidated courtyard located at the foot of the mountain, surrounded by towering immortal mountains and swirling spiritual energy. The servants' quarters were filthy and reeked of foul odors. This was the lowest level of the sect. Thousands of disciples lived in this place, responsible for fetching water, chopping wood, and collecting night soil. The wooden clown was thrown heavily onto a moldy wooden bed. From today onwards, this kid is a disciple of the servants' quarters, Wu Changfeng said arrogantly to the steward. Give him the most comfortable job. Let him feed the pigs. After saying this, my corpse seemed rooted to the ground. No matter how Wu Changfeng pulled, the jade bracelet tightened until my flesh bled. I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. I'm guarding the tomb. I know that. Once I leave, this mortal boy with no background and severely injured will not survive more than 3 days. In this ruthless cultivation world, Wu Changfeng's face darkened. You beast, once you enter the sect, you can't have your way, he held, with a hand seal. The beast-taming ring suddenly tightened, emitting golden electricity that violently struck my body. My eyes flashed with a chilling ruthlessness. Either we're together, or I'll die right now. After a long stalemate, Wu Changfeng finally gave in. But I warn you, he said, if this kid dies, or you dare to run, I'll feed his corpse to the dogs. Wu Changfeng wasn't worried about me running away. With the beast-taming ring, my life and death were in his hands. Steward Wang, he said, this ox is considered sect property. It'll be temporarily kept in your servant's quarters. Arrange a separate cow sheet for him, and take good care of him. Yes, yes, I'll treat him like royalty. After giving these instructions, Wu Changfeng gave me a cold look and turned away. That night, the courtyard now houses a severely injured boy and a grumpy, lame old ox. Limu has a persistent high fever, babbling incoherently, his body fluctuating between hot and cold. I lay beside him, using my massive body to shield him from the wind. My body was also marked with bloodstains from the jade beast ring, but I paid no heed. I produced a lump of warm herbs, a type of Ganoderma lucidum called fire sheepgrass, that I had been chewing by the roadside when no one was looking. Although it was low-grade, it had a remarkable effect on dispelling cold. I fed the herbs mouth to Lin Mu. Eat, you silly boy, I said, closing my eyes. First step, teach this kid how to take a beating. I began as a starving demon saint, thrown into the lowest level cowshed of a cultivation sect. For 3 days, I had neither eaten nor drunk, my eyes rolling back, my limbs twitching. On the verge of death, the steward, terrified, brought me the purple-flowered lamb, a delicacy reserved for inner-sect spirit beasts, and knelt down, begging me to open my mouth. But I only twitched my ears, until the heavily injured boy, leaning against the wall, walked over, placed his hand on my neck, and then looked up at the steward with a critical gaze. Although Wu Changfeng had specifically instructed that I be given a separate arrangement, the steward, Fatty Wang, clearly didn't take it seriously. In his eyes, it was just an animal. As long as it was fed and didn't starve, that was enough. He had already done more than enough by throwing the half-dead servant into the woodshed next to the cowshed and giving him a tattered blanket. However, 3 days later, Fatty Wang panicked because the cow had stopped eating. Not only that, but its condition was extremely frightening. At this moment, the area around the cowshed was filled with servants. One by one, the children peered out. Fatty Wang, sweating profusely, stood before the trough, holding a handful of top-quality spirit bone fodder, his face plastered with a fawning smile. This is the purple flower cake that only intersect retail clerks get. It costs 3 spirit stones a pound. I lay sprawled on the ground, limbs outstretched, tongue lolling out, eyes rolling back, looking like I was already dead and needed burning paper money. My breathing was weak, like a wisp of smoke, occasionally twitching. My pitiful state was truly heartbreaking. Steward Wang, if this cow dies, Elder Wu will blame us, and we'll all be in deep trouble. The servants beside me turned pale with fright. Fatty Wang was even more anxious, wanting to bang his head against the wall. Quick, go get the veterinarian. No, go get the steward of the pill hall. Fatty Wang roared. Just then, a weak voice came from the woodshed next door. He wouldn't eat other people's food. Everyone turned around and saw Lin Mu leaning against the wall, walking out shakily. After 3 days of unconsciousness, although he had woken up, his face was still as pale as paper, and he staggered with every step. Fatty Wong frowned as he looked at this sickly newcomer. Moreover, he was in a bad mood. He would only eat. If I scratched his back, Suzuki didn't explain, but simply took the spiritual herb from Fatty Wong's hand and slowly walked to my side. A miraculous scene occurred. I, who had been lying there like a corpse, heard Suzuki's footsteps, and my droopy ear twitched. When Suzuki's palm gently placed on my neck, my rolled-up eyes instantly returning to its place, I hummed twice through my nose. If he suffered some great injustice, Suzuki said softly, handing me the spirit herb. I snapped it open, chewed it perfunctorily, then looked up at Fatty Wong with an extremely critical gaze. Then at the remaining herbs in Suzuki's hand, finally turning my head away, refusing to eat. The meaning in my eyes was clear. This little bit of herb was barely enough to fill my teeth, and the person serving me was so weak. I didn't have the strength to scratch his itch. Just looking at him annoyed me, and I couldn't eat. Suzuki seemed to understand my gaze, smiling bitterly at Fatty Wong. He also said I'm too weak to scratch his itch, so he asked you to get me some meat. Fatty Wong's eyes widened. It was like listening to gibberish. This ox can talk. I'll get you meat to eat. I'll get you more meat to eat. As soon as he finished speaking, he stopped, and I immediately reverted to that near-death state of rolling my eyes, foaming at the mouth, and convulsing. I even managed to squeeze out a few gurgling sounds from my throat, like someone finally suffocating. This isn't an ox. This is clearly a living ancestor. Go fetch a bucket of spiritual spring water. This is the first time in his life he's eaten something imbued with spiritual energy. A warm current rolled down his throat and into his stomach, making him feel so comfortable he wanted to cry. I, on the other hand, slowly chewed on the purple flower bed mixed with spiritual spring water, occasionally glancing sideways at Suzuki, who was wolfing down his food, a hint of smugness flashing in my eyes. Silly boy, learn from this. In this dog-eat-dog world, to survive well, you have to learn to leverage power, he observed me from the shadows for a long time, trying to find the source of that terrifying aura emanating from me. He even used his divine sense to scan me inside and out hundreds of times, in the dead of night. Apart from that broken, mangled demon core, and a terrible physical body, I was really just an ordinary old ox. Wu Changfeng even doubted whether the pressure he felt in the room that day was an illusion, or the release of some kind of one-time secret treasure. From today onwards, this kid doesn't have to do heavy work. He'll be responsible for serving this ox. Wu Changfeng transmitted his voice to Fatty Wong from the shadows. Also, I'm betting on Wu Changfeng's greed. As long as Wu Changfeng, they even coveted the secret on my body. The screen was safe. The handyman disciples all said I was crazy, acting like an animal. What was even more outrageous was that the old ox spat on my back. Everyone found it disgusting. But little did they know that the spit contained the essence of the ancient demon race's body tempering, and a trace of the demon saint's blood essence. Life in the handyman's courtyard seemed peaceful, but undercurrents were surging. Although Suzuki didn't have to fetch water or chop wood, his special treatment of rising to a higher position quickly aroused the jealousy of the other handyman disciples, especially the handyman's courtyard's little leader, known as the Toad Snake, Zhao San. Zhao San had the cultivation of the second level of qi refining and had been bullying people in the handyman's courtyard for many years. Originally, he had been eyeing the lucrative job of feeding spirit beasts. The result was that Suzuki, that good-for-nothing with no cultivation, intercepted the deal, and even the daily 3 portions of spiritual meat were gone. What was the point? He just got lucky and picked up a strange cow. In the cowshed, Suzuki wasn't sleeping. By the moonlight, he held a tattered booklet in his hand. His brows furrowed as he read. This was the most basic, common book of the Qingyun sect. Anyone who could read could practice it. Although Suzuki had never been, he had listened to the 4 books teachers' lectures in the village before, and could recognize a few characters by guessing. He focused his qi in his dantian, guiding the spiritual energy into his body and circulating it through his body. An hour passed, and Suzuki's legs were numb. But he couldn't feel a fart. Instead, because the cold poison hadn't been cleared, he felt waves of coldness in his body. His lips were turning purple from the cold. Suzuki slumped down, putting down his book, and sighing. It seems I really don't have the talent for cultivation, he thought. The Changchun Palace says that those with good aptitude can sense qi within 100 breaths, while those with poor aptitude can still grasp it in 3 days. He looked at the old ox lying beside him and smiled bitterly. That kind of trash doesn't deserve to be called a cultivation method. 8 or 9 out of 10 people are born with locked meridians and broken meridians. Practicing this kind of orthodox Taoist qi cultivation method for a lifetime will only result in strengthening the body. Your path isn't in qi, but in the body. The old ox suddenly stood up, stretched, and cracked its joints. It walked to Suzuki, lowered its head, and gently nudged Suzuki's knee with its intact horn, signaling him to stand up. It was late at night, and the old ox ignored his question. It turned around, its front legs bent, kneeling, but its hind legs standing straight, its back arched high, like the mountain peaks. Head was pressed down so low it almost touched his chest. The most outrageous thing was that, with each breath, the previously thin moonlight and spiritual energy around him seemed to be drawn into a vortex, frantically drilling into his pores. Suzuki was stunned. He hesitated for a moment, then clumsily crawled on the ground, like an old ox, his front legs kneeling, his hind legs straight, his back arched. Crack, crack. Old ox. Only 4-legged people can do this pose. Suzuki gritted his teeth, enduring the excruciating pain, and forcibly twisted his joints, finally managing to get into that position. In that instant, he felt all the muscles in his body stretched to their limit as he imitated the old ox's panting breathing rhythm. A surge of heat rose from his spine, instantly dispelling the chill within his body. This pose could actually forcefully clear blocked blood and qi. This was the supreme body tempering technique of the ancient demon race. Human cultivation emphasizes following the natural order, guiding qi into the body gradually, while demon cultivation emphasizes defying the heavens. Like a leaky bucket. But the demon's body cultivation method didn't require storing qi. Instead, it used spiritual energy to directly temper the skin, flesh, tendons, and bones, forging the body into an iron plate. But to his surprise, he discovered that, with each breath, the stubborn cold poison within his body was being forced out little by little, turning into black sweat that flowed down. Just as Suzuki was about to collapse from exhaustion, the old ox suddenly opened its mouth and spat on Suzuki's bare back. Anyone else who saw this would find it extremely disgusting, but Suzuki only felt as if a raging fire exploded where the spit landed, and an extremely domineering medicinal power instantly penetrated the skin and seeped into the bone marrow. That wasn't ordinary saliva. It was the saliva that the old ox had been working so hard for the past few days. He chewed on the spiritual herbs, then expelled the refined essence of the herb, returning pill from his stomach, even containing a trace of extremely faint demon saint blood essence. But he gritted his teeth, remaining silent and desperately maintaining that strange posture. The old ox looked at the trembling boy who refused to lie down, a hint of admiration flashing in its eyes. Not bad. This fierceness is like mine. No pain, no gain. In this malice-filled world, he, clumsily but firmly, took his first step in his unorthodox path. Every night, I would learn to moo like a cow in the cowshed, even lying on the ground like a cow, arching my back. The servants and disciples all said I was crazy, until that morning, when the foreman Zhao San came to cause trouble and reached out to push me. It felt like pushing a rock. Enraged, he swung his fist, and I instinctively lowered my shoulder and bumped into him. Even more absurdly, the outer sect deacon arrived to examine me and found my meridians blocked and devoid of spiritual energy. He said I had become wild from spending years with wild bulls. Strangely, I didn't feel tired at all that morning. Instead, I felt refreshed and full of boundless energy. I stood up and moved around a bit, and my joints cracked like popping beans. I looked down at my hands, which had been dry and thin due to long-term malnutrition and frostbite, but now they were rosy and plump, with a faint bronze sheen under the skin. What I didn't know was, why aren't you out here working? Why aren't you out here with your 2 lackeys? He's deliberately here to cause trouble today. This kid has only been here a few days, yet his complexion has improved so much. Old Huang taught me that when you're not strong enough, you should hide your strength and stop talking nonsense. Zhao San threw me a broken axe with a blunt blade. Ironwood is as hard as iron, and ordinary iron can't hurt it. It has to be delivered before noon. Zhao San took a step forward and reached out to push me. I told you to go, so? Go. Why so much nonsense? Zhao San used 30% of his strength in this push. Logically, I, a mere mortal, should have been knocked over. However, when Zhao San's palm hit my shoulder, it felt like pushing against a hard rock. I didn't budge. Instead, Zhao San subconsciously tensed his muscles. I didn't expect it to have such a good effect. Good lad. In the cultivation world, mortals without spiritual roots would absolutely never have the composure to fight to the death like this. If anything happens, it's my fault. My pupils contracted. If it were before, this punch would have been lightning fast in my eyes. Impossible to dodge, but for some reason, Zhao San's movements seemed slow and full of flaws. No, in a flash. The image of Old Yellowbox's bull-like stance from last night, and his usual domineering spirit of whoever dares to challenge me will face me, suddenly flashed into my mind. My body reacted faster than my brain. Instead of retreating, I took a step forward. My shoulder slamming into Zhao San's arms with an unreasonable brute force. If I had to give it a name, it would be Old Ox crashing into a tree. There were no fancy techniques, just pure speed and power. Plus, the ferocious momentum of a demonic beast charging at that moment. Zhao San didn't even see how I moved. He felt like he had been hit head-on by a running wild boar. Two of his ribs broke instantly, and he flew backward like a sandbag, crashing heavily into the pillar of the cow sheet. The thatch on the roof fell down in a rustling sound. I was dumbfounded. I looked at my shoulder. Old Yellow Ox hadn't woken up yet. The owl was leisurely chewing grass, watching the farce unfold. His eyes held a hint of mockery, as if to say, the posture wasn't cool enough. Next time, remember to hit him on the bottom. You stole forbidden sect techniques. Suddenly, a young man in the white robes of an outer sect deacon walked in. He carried a long sword and had a generous expression. Zhao San, upon seeing Li Han, rushed over, as if he'd seen a savior, grabbing Li Han's leg and crying, Senior Brotherly, you must stand up for me. This Suzuki tower, he stole demonic arts and almost killed me. I'm only at the second level of Qi, refining, and a mere mortal broke my ribs. He turned to look. His gaze swept over me, like lightning, scrutinizing me from head to toe. I felt a pang of panic, but I forced a bow. In a flash, he appeared before me, a hand gripping my shoulder like an iron clamp. A domineering spiritual force forcefully penetrated my body. I felt excruciating pain all over my body, as if my meridians were being torn apart. Since there was no spiritual energy, it couldn't be a cultivation technique. But where did you get that strength from that collision? Before I could even make up an excuse, the old ox beside me suddenly moved, stood up, walked to the wooden stake, and idly rubbed its shoulder against it. Click! Someone leaned closer to me. Having spent years with a wild bull, he'd acquired a touch of savagery, and coupled with his innate superhuman strength, he was a promising candidate for body cultivation. Zhao San, lacking skill, deserved to be beaten. Li Han changed the subject, saying, since you're so good, the annual outer sect competition in 3 days is perfect. We need a practice target. These practice targets were sandbags used by former outer sect disciples to practice. Every year, several targets were crippled or even killed. Li Han patted my shoulder meaningfully and said, perform well. If you can survive 3 rounds on the stage. Then, Li Han turned. He left, leaving me standing there, fist clenched. Is this how they train as targets? Is this the rule of the cultivation world? Either you're trampled in the mud or used as a punching bag. An old ox walked behind me, its large head pressing against my shoulder, its warm breath on my ear. What's there to be afraid of? Since they want to use you as a target, let's give them a surprise. These 3 days, I'll teach you the second move, wind ox striking formation. Until that day, I was covered in wounds, paralyzed in the hay. The next second, I was covered in blood. my skin bursting open. Even more outrageous, the roof of the cowshed was suddenly ripped off, and a Foundation establishment elder hovered in midair, roaring. The outer sect competition ended with results that surprised everyone. The lowly servant, Ling Mu, who had been considered a human punching bag by everyone, actually survived 3 rounds. In the 3rd round, facing Zhao Taizhu, an outer sect disciple at the 3rd level of Qi, refining, he once again used that ridiculously powerful move, Old Ox charging a tree. Without any spiritual energy fluctuations, relying solely on his brute force, as if he wanted to smash a hole in the sky. He forcefully withstood Zhao Tieju's protective golden bell shield, shoving the 200-pound strongman off the stage and into the audience, knocking over a row of female spectators. The crowd erupted in uproar. Some said I had superhuman strength. Others said I had taken performance-enhancing drugs. But Li Han, the person in charge of this competition, looked at my legs, which, though bruised, remained as steady as a rock. He thought they were good prospects, like warriors trained to have copper skin and iron bones. Han, with a mischievous grin, casually tossed me a bottle of liniment and told me to go back to the general hospital, although I had won. The shockwave from the mortal body and the hardworking cultivator's back made my internal organs ache. Old Huang, I can't go on. I definitely won't be able to get out of bed tomorrow. Old Huang, the ox, was lying opposite me, slowly and methodically hoeing. Hearing this, he snorted disdainfully. What a coward. He only managed to beat 3 Qi refining stage weaklings, and he's already complaining about the pain. Back in the day, when I single-handedly fought 100,000 heavenly soldiers, even when my intestines spilled out, I just stuffed them back in and kept fighting. Despite his cursing, a hint of heartache still flashed in the old ox's eyes. These past few days, he'd been watching how I trained. During the day, I was used as a punching bag, and at night, I had to practice that torture-like 9 revolutions divine demon transformation. My bones are indeed hard. Harder than most demon beast cubs. But my body is still mortal. And the cold poison hasn't been cleared yet. If I keep overdrawing myself like this, I'll be crippled in less than a month. The old ox stood up and paced around the drafty cowshed twice. Suddenly, he stopped. His sensitive nose sniffed the air, and a faint fragrance drifted over on the northwest wind. If he remembered correctly, that direction was the area where the inner sect elders lived. An elder Wu Changfeng, who had captured me, happened to live there. Moreover, if this thing were given to this fool, not only would it heal his injuries, but it could also suppress that damned cold poison to a great extent, and might even help him forcibly open his first meridian. The old ox glanced back at me, who was already unconscious in the haystack. His movements were as light as a cat's, despite having a huge body and hard hooves. He didn't make a sound when stepping on the withered branches and leaves. This was the innate supernatural power of the demon race, the ability to tread on snow without leaving a trace. Although he had lost all his demon power, his body's instincts were still there. His broken foot seemed to have a keen natural perception of formations, always able to find the weak points of formations and feel his way to the end. Outside the medicine garden, where the wind howled, the old ox, in the eyes of the former heavenly demon saint, was a sieve leaking everywhere. A formation set up by a Foundation establishment cultivator, the old ox found a corner, pushed off with its hind legs, and crouched down like a dog, squeezing through a hole in the fence. Ignoring the ordinary spiritual herbs, the old ox went straight for the purple ginseng planted in the center of the giant spirit formation. It opened its mouth wide, spitting and swallowing it all in one gulp. Not immediately swallowing, it held the ginseng under its tongue, using the demon race's unique spirit-locking pouch to lock in its medicinal power. Then it turned and ran, as swift as the wind, leaving no trace, only taking with it the lifeblood that the fifth elder had nurtured for 20 years. When I returned to the cowshed, the old ox was still asleep, its brow furrowed in pain. It walked to my side and nudged my face with its head. Old ox, stop. It, a highly pure, even slightly earthy, scent wafted from it. The immense medicinal power flowed down his throat and directly into my mouth. The next second, my eyes widened violently, and I felt like a boiled shrimp, writhing in agony. It was so hot. That was a third-tier spiritual medicine. Even Foundation establishment cultivators wouldn't dare eat it raw, let alone a mortal like me. The violent medicinal power exploded within me instantly, like a fire dragon, rampaging through my fragile meridians. The old ox was prepared. It raised its front hooves and precisely tapped my dantian and the acupoint on my back, guiding the violent medicinal power away from my heart meridian, and instead directing it all towards my congested limbs and bones. I wanted to scream in pain, but my throat felt like it was on fire, and I could only hiss. At this critical moment, how dare they steal my golden body? A furious roar echoed through the night sky. Wu Changfeng hovered in midair, his long hair dancing wildly, his eyes bloodshot, like the enraged lion held a compass, its needle fixed on the old ox's belly. He had left a spiritual imprint on the purple-gold ginseng. The old ox's heart skipped a beat. Oh no, he'd been so focused on locking in the medicinal power that he'd forgotten to erase the old man's spiritual imprint. This body was too worn out, and his brain wasn't working properly either. Wu Changfeng looked down at the scene below. In the cowshed, I was covered in blood, my aura violet. I'd clearly just ingested the purple-gold ginseng. The old ox was standing beside me, pressing me down with its hooves, seemingly helping me neutralize the medicinal power. Wu Changfeng's eyes widened instantly. That was the main medicine he'd prepared for breaking through to the golden core stage. He'd nurtured it for 20 years, and it had been stolen by a beast. He was furious. For a useless servant like me, Wu Changfeng's mentality collapsed. Spit out my meal. Even if it's digested, I'll refine this brat's blood. The old ox roared and charged forward recklessly. He wanted to smash that powerful spiritual hand, but he slapped it backhand. Oof. Since you're so protective of him, let's see what secrets you're hiding. He walked step by step toward the old ox, a skinning knife gleaming coldly in his hand. As for that good for nothing. Struggling in pain. Wait, I'll refine your evil spirit, then throw him into the alchemy furnace, and refine the medicinal power of the purple gold meal he ate, along with his flesh and blood, back to him. On the execution platform, he bit off his own wrist, and fed his blood to an old ox pierced by chains. Everyone said he was crazy, using his own life to save a beast. Even more outrageous was that his blood wasn't red, but had an eerie purple glow. Just as the elder was joyfully drawing the ox's blood, the old ox, which had already died, suddenly opened its eyes. This time, they were blood red. On the execution platform, the wind and snow were like knives. The old ox was impaled by 4 thick. The massive demon-locking chain pierced through his collarbone, pinning him firmly to the center of Xingtai. Wu Changfeng wasn't in a hurry to kill him. He was setting up an evil formation called the Marrow Extraction and Blood Refining Formation. In a corner of Xingtai, I was thrown to the ground. I wasn't dead yet, although the medicinal power of the golden ginseng was violent. Thanks to Lao Huang's previous guidance, I was still alive. At this moment, although I couldn't move, my mind was clearer than ever before. It was over. This time, I was truly doomed. Lao Huang smiled bitterly to himself. In his previous life, he had roamed the 9 heavens. What storms hadn't he seen? He didn't regret stealing that ginseng. I don't want you to see me skinned alive. Wu Changfeng finished setting up the formation, a distorted excitement on his face. He activated the array plate. Streams of blood-red light rose from the ground, like venomous snakes, burrowing into Lao Huang's body. Wow! Lao Huang let out a shrill scream. The pain was a direct attack on his soul. An agonizing extraction. His body trembled violently. Fine beads of blood began to seep from his already bald fur. Stop! Stop! I desperately tried to crawl over, but my body wouldn't obey me. Wu Changfeng ignored my cries. He was greedily staring at the jade bottle collecting blood. In the center of the formation, this blood even had golden threads. Wu Changfeng was shocked. As the marrow extraction proceeded, the deeply hidden essence of a demon saint within the old ox was forced out. The blood was dark gold, radiating a noble aura that chilled the heart. I'm rich. I'm rich. With this bottle of blood, I can make anything. Not just a golden core cultivator, but even a nascent soul cultivator. His life force was rapidly draining away. I looked at the old ox's gradually dimming eyes, my heart aching. Old ox, I won't sell. Wouldn't sell? He was my family. Memories flashed before my eyes. from the snow-covered ruins. Visit where the master vowed to protect him, to the late-night teachings in the cow sheet. This old cow was his only family in the world, his benefactor who had saved him from this predicament. My eyes suddenly went vacant. Then a mad flame ignited within me. I remembered the 9 revolutions of divine demon transformation that Old Huang taught me last night, a cultivation method that emphasizes defying the heavens. If faced with dire circumstances, one must offer oneself to the demon and sacrifice one's blood to the Tao. And then there was the crazy thing that the wandering Taoist priest said. When he examined my bones as a child, this child was born with broken meridians. I didn't know what the ancient tyrant blood was. The remaining medicinal power of that golden body gave me my last strength. I had no knife in my hand, but I had a mouth. I suddenly raised my wrist and bit down hard. In the crimson blood, a strange purple light shone through. It emitted a strong, suffocatingly sweet, metallic scent. The moment this scent appeared, the surrounding crimson arrays, which had been operating, dimmed slightly. What was that smell? Wu Changfeng whirled around. Before he could react, I lunged forward. Like a dying beast, ignoring the backlash from the arrays and the crimson light tearing my skin. I charged into the central oxen's mouth. My voice was weak, yet carried a moving tenderness. I shoved my bloodied wrist directly into the oxen's slightly open, still bleeding mouth. Eating meat was like drawing out marrow. It meant certain death. And he was drinking the ox's blood. What was he doing? The next second, Wu Changfeng's question turned to fear. Because seeing the second thud, the chains on the execution platform began to tremble. The third thud, and the surrounding marrow extraction array runes began to crumble inch by inch. The old ox's already unfocused eyes suddenly opened. No longer cloudy, no longer dark gold, but a pure, boundless crimson. The color of hell. Every day, I would kowtow 3 times to an old ox, and the villagers all said I was crazy. Until that day, on the execution platform, watching it being pierced by chains, its marrow extracted and its blood refined. In despair, I bit off my own wrist and fed the blood to it. The next second, the ox opened its crimson eyes. It stood upright, like a human, looking at the elder who was slumped on the ground, and coldly asked, "How come?" Only the thunderous sound of its heartbeat echoed throughout the entire mortuary. Wu Changfeng was horrified to discover that the array plate in his hand was getting hot and cracked. He desperately tried to cut off the spiritual energy attack, but the array seemed to have come alive, frantically drawing all the spiritual energy within a 10-mile radius. Even the snow and withered grass on the ground, and even the blood and chi of the spectators in the distance, were uncontrollably converging toward Xingtai. At the center of the vortex was the old ox. The old ox had completely changed. Its fur was peeling off at a visible speed, and the new skin was no longer wrinkled brown, but a translucent black armor, like obsidian. The severed foot, nourished by the purple blood, grew back instantly, with cracking sounds, and transformed, curved like a knife, crackled with purple lightning. His body hadn't grown larger. Instead, it had shrunk, becoming even more lean and sturdy. I remained clinging to his back, for countless tiny tendrils extended from the armor on the old ox's back, gently sealing my wounds and sending a life force back to me. "Are you full?" the old ox asked, looking at my gradually reddening face. He reached out a huge finger and gently scratched my nose. "The Qingyun sect owes you a debt. Today, I'll collect it all, principal and interest." He picked me up again and walked out of the pill cauldron hall. The dark clouds in the sky parted, and 12 figures hovered in midair, riding flying swords. The leader, with white hair and beard, possessed an immortal air, surrounded by 9 golden flying swords. His aura unfathomable. The Qingyun sect master was in the late golden core stage. The great perfection King Suzy stood before all the inner elders of the Qingyun sect, all at the late foundation establishment stage, or even the pseudo-core formation level. King Suzy's heart bled as he looked at the devastation below. No matter what kind of monster you are, Today I will extract your soul, refine your spirit, and burn you to the heavenly lamp for 100 years, to appease the spirits of my sect's dead." King Suzi's anger flared and, with a swift movement of his hand, he formed an evil array. Until that day, he held me unconscious, kicked down the defensive array of the pill cauldron hall, and fed me third-tier pills like candy. Even more outrageous, the Qingyun sect master, along with 12 elders, set up the 10,000 swords returning to the sect array. But that bull merely yawned, and then smashed a 1,000-foot-long sword of light with a single blow. With a command from King Suzi, the 12 elders simultaneously unleashed their natal flying swords, the mountain protecting. At the array's core, countless sword energies rose from the mountains, converging in the sky to form a gigantic light sword 1,000 feet long. Its tip pointed directly at the old ox below. This power surpassed the limits of the Golden Core stage and even touched the threshold of the nascent soul stage. The air was torn apart, emitting a piercing shriek. The rubble on the ground turned to dust under the sword's pressure. The old ox, at the eye of the storm, remained nonchalant. He shifted my position, carrying me on his back, and used a black demonic energy belt to firmly bind the boy to his armor. "Wake up, boy." What I saw was that terrifying light sword in the sky, seemingly capable of destroying the world. I trembled with fear. "Don't be afraid." The old ox's voice was as steady as a mountain. "Watch this moment. These cultivators, all they do is concoct fancy formations and magical treasures, borrowing the power of heaven and earth and the legacy of their ancestors. They seem powerful, but are actually quite vulnerable. True powerhouses don't rely on heaven or earth. They only believe in their own strength." In the sky, King Suzi, seeing this monstrous talent, still lecturing the mortal on his back even as death approaches, was enraged. His 3 corpses leaped in a rage. He gripped the seemingly ordinary iron rod with both hands, his legs slightly bent, and took a deep breath. This breath seemed to inhale the surrounding wind, snow, spiritual energy, and even light, as if swallowing it whole. His chest bulged high, and the dark gold patterns on his black armor glowed wildly. With a roar, he leaped. But the force was so great that it created a crater 100 meters deep in the ground beneath his feet. He was like a black cannonball, heading against the 1,000-foot-long sword of light. I, lying on Lao Huang's back, only felt the wind rushing past my ears. The sound turned into a sharp explosion. The figure was as small as an ant fighting an elephant, but its momentum was like overturning the entire chessboard. Force breaks all laws. With the old ox's roar, the iron rod slammed into the tip of the lightsaber. Cracks spread rapidly, instantly covering the entire body. The green-bearded man's eyes almost popped out. The old ox exerted force again, the muscles in his arms bulging like cages. But behind this beauty was destruction. The formation was broken, and the backlash followed. Uft, uft, in midair. The 12 elders coughed up blood at the same time and fell from the sky like dumplings. The green-bearded man, as the core of the formation, suffered the worst. His 9 natal flying swords shattered inch by inch. He screamed and bled from all 7 orifices, falling directly from the late Golden Core stage to the Foundation Establishment stage. The old ox hovered in midair, the iron rod in his hand still humming. "If I can't even withstand one blow from you, what kind of immortality am I?" With a single blow, the stone tablet shattered. Even if anyone from the Qingyun sect survived this day, their reputation would be utterly ruined. I lay on Old Yellow's back, watching this scene, the shock in my heart indescribable. A seed sprouted within me. It turned out that one didn't need spiritual roots or magic. As long as one's strength was great enough, one could tear a hole in the sky. Old Yellow didn't go on a killing spree. At his level, killing these defenseless ants was dirtying his hands. He took what he needed to take, smashed what he needed to smash, and vented his anger. Most importantly, he felt the awakened power within him, rapidly fading, carrying me on his back amidst the fearful, hateful, yet hesitant gazes of the Qingyun sect survivors. He strode towards the mountain gate. The setting sun cast long, long shadows of the man and the ox. I had to feed one every day. The old ox kowtowed 3 times, and everyone in the village said I was crazy. Until that day, after he shattered the immortal gate with a single blow, he suddenly knelt by the stream. His majestic black armor turned into black smoke and dissipated, transforming him back into that bald, lame old ox. He panted heavily and told me that he had left the Qingyun Sect's territory and walked into the vast 10,000 mountains. The old ox finally couldn't hold on any longer. Thump, his legs buckled, and he knelt by a stream. His black armor began to peel away, turning into black smoke and dissipating. His majestic and domineering demonic form could no longer be maintained. His body rapidly shrank and hunched over. A moment later, he transformed back into that bald, one-legged old ox with a thin left hind leg. But this time, his eyes were no longer cloudy. Although tired, they shone with an unprecedented coolness. I rolled off the ox's back, hugged the old ox's neck, and tears welled up again. How are you? Don't scare me. Let's go back. This fight stunned me for a moment. Before I reacted, instinctively, I channeled my inner energy, unleashing the 9 revolutions. Divine demon transformation, causing my blood and chi to surge like a river, flowing freely. The congenital broken meridian that had plagued me for 16 years, making me a useless person, was completely opened under the influence of the purple gold ginseng and the old ox's demonic power. Not only that, it was completely opened. This outburst damaged his very essence. He might need to sleep for a long time, or become a truly ordinary ox. It would take a long time for him to slowly recover. The sun was setting. That place was where the sun set. The direction of the legendary demon race's holy land, the kingdom of 10,000 demons, and also the place where he had perished in his previous life. Go. Pick up the weapons that Lao Tzu left there. I'll take you to see the world on my way back. This Qingyun sect is just a frog in a well. The real world is vast. Although I couldn't understand Lao Huang's inner thoughts, I saw the longing in his eyes. The snow stopped and the mountain road was long. A young man led a lame old ox. Lao Huang, I'll carry you from now on. Lao Huang, do you think I can be as powerful as you in the future? There's a town ahead. Should we rob it or buy something? The young man's chatter and the old ox's grunts gradually faded into the vast twilight. Behind them, the news of the Qingyun sect's destruction spread like wildfire throughout the cultivation world. Legend has it that an ancient demon saint was reincarnated, riding a green ox, shattering a celestial gate with a single blow, and breaking all laws. Some say it was a sign of the demon's resurgence. But for me, it was just the beginning of my long journey with Lao Huang.